There's nothing I can do to take it back. And if someone was hurt by it, saying I'm sorry.
We open with a whisper that feels like a thunderclap. Gene Deal, the one-time wall of muscle between the spotlight and the storm, is saying out loud what the most paranoid corners of the internet have only dared to imply. He's pointing a finger at the mogul who built an empire out of bravado and platinum plaques, and insisting the king of pop wasn't lost to a tragic medical event, but to a power play gone nuclear. We hear the cadence in Deal's name, and we feel that old chill. The bodyguard who watched the doors, now claiming there were bigger doors behind them, doors we were never meant to see. The claim lands like a brick through glass, that the boss wasn't a bystander but an organizer taking cues from shadowy superiors who wanted the world's most famous entertainer under leash and ledger, and when that failed, they wanted him gone. We can almost see the chessboard the conspiracy lovers keep sketching in the margins. Titans at the top, moving pieces in silent rooms, while the rest of us argue over autopsy headlines and a doctor's courtroom tears.
It's a lot more complicated than just Dr. Murray was at his bedside when he died. Circumstances had been leading up to this death for years.
We follow the thread backward because that's how this kind of story always starts. In the months before Michael's passing, the whispers say he'd grown wary of everyone, convinced faceless suits were circling his catalog, his tours, his voice. We remember reports of paranoia, of phones swapped and rooms swept, and we ask the only question that matters in gossip world. Did he know too much? Or did he simply refuse to sign on the dotted line? If Deal's telling is even a fraction true, the king wasn't just a target of opportunities, he was a problem that needed solving. The stakes sound operatic: influence, money rivers measured in future decades, and a legend whose refusal to play ball threatened to unravel a quieter kind of order. When we put that frame around the day everything changed, the lighting in our memory shifts. It stops feeling like a personal tragedy and starts reading like the climax of a thriller. And that is exactly why this shockwave is ripping through the timeline now, when the mogul's name is already clanging with courtroom echoes and late-night punchlines. Because look at the context we're standing in. The man at the center of this blast radius has seen his LA palace hit by federal agents, his Miami base lit up with flashing lights, his life pried open by raids and filings and accusers we can't keep straight without a scorecard. We're watching a mansion in Holmby Hills, 10 bedrooms, a guest house with a studio, a theater that seats more than some indie cinemas, float onto the market for $61.5 million, days after new legal fireworks. It's a house the public now knows by overhead chopper shots, and a certain lagoon-style pool with a grotto that's the stuff of whispered jokes. And here's a real-world line that dropped like a cymbal crash from his camp not so long ago. No matter how many lawsuits are filed, it won't change the fact that Mr. Combs has never done the things people allege, his attorney said, calling the latest claims baseless and courtroom pure. That sounds like a dare and a denial wrapped together, and in gossip land, a dare is gasoline.
For him, although interestingly, we haven't seen the indictments yet. There's been some time lag. I suppose it will take some time to go through all the forensic.
So when Gene Deal's alleged bombshell slides across our feet, it fuses with everything else already glowing. We see Deal outside a courthouse, his name floating around in side dramas, the kind that flare when trials turn the sidewalk into a sideshow. We see how the accusation slithers right into the moment like it's been waiting in the wings for years. We don't need to believe it to feel the pull, we just need to know why this rumor lights up like a pinball machine. It's because it reframes the man's entire rise as phase one of a much darker franchise. It suggests the hits and the sparkling beverage were the glitter on a vault door. It suggests the king of pop didn't just pass, he was eliminated. And yes, that word has started to echo because it is exactly the sort of cinematic word those late-night podcasts love to repeat until it feels inevitable.
As you may already know, after my tour ended, I remain out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. This medication was initially prescribed to see the excruciating pain that I was suffering after recent reconstructive surgery on my scalp.
Now here's where the map gets stranger. We're asked to imagine an underground city beneath one of the most exclusive zip codes on Earth. A web of passageways that tie a hip-hop mogul's Holmby Hills fortress to the house that once defined Hollywood's after-hours mythology and, impossibly, to the home of the king himself. A staffer once showed blueprints, they say, connecting the Playboy Mansion to A-list addresses with concrete arteries dating back to the 70s. Plans that may have been a prank, that may have been an archive stunt, or that may have been something half-built and sealed in '89. The Playboy site once teased the idea, and people who love a fairy tale for adults have never quite let it fade. We're told the mogul's modern spread includes a grotto and an underwater swimming tunnel. We're shown listing photos where the amenities read like a billionaire's wish list. So when the choppers hover and the feds roll up, online sleuths spin one more fantasy, that a man can vanish through a submerged passage and reappear in a private maze.
But they say that this tunnel connects to the Playboy mansion. You guys remember that? Hugh Hefner, the guy who lived with all those women in his mansion? There's no available evidence right now. However, reports are noting that Combs mansions do have a pool with an underwater swimming tunnel. They say it's not connected to the Playboy mansion, but there is a reason why the Playboy mansion keeps coming up.
We can hear the way they pitch it to each other online. A tunnel like a magic trick, a side door to safety, an escape that proves he'd planned for a siege long before anyone showed up with a warrant. We know another detail too. A CNN staffer reportedly shot down a viral screenshot about secret links from the mogul's home to the mansion and Michael's place as a manipulated image, the internet equivalent of yelling props department at a movie set. That is a manipulated image and not something CNN reported. A reporter said when the fake started to sprint. The tunnel's tale gets debunked, then resurrected, then debunked again, because that's what happens when a rumor is too delicious for its own good. It refuses to go quietly, it keeps finding new angles because the ground above it keeps shaking. But for the Gene Deal angle to really catch fire, the story needs a third rail, and that's where the cloning whisper slinks in. We hate to admit it, but in this timeline, when AI is writing sonnets and deepfakes are turning nobodies into somebody else's face in 5 seconds flat, the word clone doesn't feel like pure comic book anymore. So we get the version where the mogul, ever the control freak if you believe his critics, explored a lab-level fantasy, a replica pop icon who could be switched on and off like a streaming service. It sounds deranged, yes, and that's exactly the point. Conspiracy culture runs on the idea that the real plan always sounds deranged until it's suddenly obvious. In that framing, Michael's late-stage behavior, his hypervigilance, his endless audits of who he could trust, becomes the breadcrumb trail. We're nudged to see those long nights not as insomnia, but as reconnaissance. The rumor writes itself. He sniffed out the plan, refused the swap, and paid for it.
Michael graduated from pain meds to anesthesia. He used it to sleep, and he became shockingly reliant on it. A lot of people were saying privately, Michael's addictions and the cancellation of the Dangerous tour were directly connected.
We're not saying we buy it, we're saying that's the arc seductive enough to pull normal people across the line. Because there's no stronger allure than the promise that you, the viewer, are finally stepping behind the curtain. We notice too how these stories always braid themselves into the present day, brushing up against documents and headlines you can actually verify. Diddy, and yes, we know he's reinvented his name as many times as he's reinvented a hook. Bought the Holmby Hills estate in 2014 for roughly $39 million, says the property paperwork. He took out 2 chunky mortgages. He's now listing it for more than $61 million. The place sits in Holmby Hills, close enough to the old mansion to throw a stone if he had a major league arm. Truths like that become anchors for the wilder tales, because if one building has a grotto and an underwater tunnel, why not a hallway beneath that? If a manager once joked about celebrity passageways closing in '89, why not imagine a new generation of secret infrastructure, a tech bro's dream turned nocturnal pipeline? And then there's the air up here, thick with filings and allegations and defenses so emphatic they read like closing arguments even when they come in press releases. We see one suit that supposedly places the mogul at a party where celebrities just happen to be present. We see a spokesperson for a basketball legend swatted away with the calendar, saying, in essence, check the schedule. He was on the court, not at any mansion. We see the mogul's team brand a complaint depraved, built to garner headlines and dare anyone to prove otherwise in a courtroom instead of on a timeline. We see raids described by his counsel as an excessive show of force, a witch hunt vibe in their words. And we hear the drumbeat line we've heard from his side for months. He's confident, he'll fight, he'll prevail. We're not the jury, but we're the audience, and gossip has always been a parallel justice system. It tries cases in whispers and declares verdicts with side eyes.
Walking in there with an already pre-approved idea of what you think is going to happen and what you think your opinion is going to be, it is hard to be able to say that that person is going to be swayed and can be fair and impartial.
The tunnels fold into that atmosphere like fog. Because tunnels are the perfect metaphor for what we're being sold in this moment. Hidden routes, private access, a network you only know about if you're invited. There were authentic-looking blueprints once for celebrity corridors under the Playboy grounds. It might have been an April Fool's wink. It might have been phase 1 of a project that got sealed, if you believe the lore. A Playboy staffer was quoted as hearing, "They were closed up sometime in 1989. We file that in the cabinet marked could be true or could be the best prank ever, and we move on. Because the modern rumor doesn't need hard proof. It needs a vibe. The vibe is that luxury in this town always had a shadow floor plan. The vibe is that if you weren't supposed to be seen, you had another way in. And that sets the table for Deal's heavy insinuation about the king of pop. The idea is that Michael wasn't just the most famous artist in the world, he was the most dangerous to anyone trying to run the game from the top floor. He owned assets that could tilt balance sheets. He had a brand that could eclipse anyone else's launch. He had, in this theory, secrets that could crater reputations and maybe even implode a revenue model that depended on certain myths staying intact. If he broke silence, the story goes, labels would scramble, executives would sprint, and the money rivers would crash into the canyon. The only way to avoid that was control. The only way to guarantee control was replacement, and if he wouldn't agree to any of it, well, that's when the word eliminated starts to feel less like a movie line and more like an instruction.
I never enabled his addiction, which I was not aware of. Your Honor, I am an innocent man. They accused me of having Michael on a 3-hour propofol infusion. That was false.
Before anyone throws stones, we note another poisonous little garnish that's being sprinkled on top of this stew. The fixers. Names like Fahim Muhammad get dragged into the chat as professional problem solvers who, according to one lawsuit, could make people and problems disappear. We know Fahim once worked security on the Michael beat, then later for the Mogul, and we know he testified at the doctor's trial about the awful scene inside the Holmby house on the day Michael left this world. The implication the rumor mill wants us to draw is obvious. The same ecosystem protected a superstar, then protected a power player, and those ecosystems have rules we're not supposed to understand. We hear claims about hidden cameras, non-disclosure contracts, party rituals with coded names. We see denials, meet accusations, meet countersuits, and we recognize the pattern. The fog gets thicker and thicker until everyone is stumbling. That fog is where cloning slides in without anyone laughing. We can almost storyboard the pitch the conspiracists believe was whispered in some private room. A lab partner, a lookalike, a trained mimic, an engineered voice, a one-to-one substitute who can perform the catalog while contracts do the rest. Could the Mogul have wanted to debut a programmable star while the real icon was managed into retirement? The crowd that sees patterns in tea leaves swears they can spot differences in gait, in vocal fry, in the way a glove sits on a hand in rehearsal footage. We don't have to endorse it to understand why it thrills. It hands the audience a magnifying glass and says, go hunt for glitches in the matrix. It turns every shaky video into a potential smoking gun. All of it comes back to that one line Deal's circle is daring us to repeat because they know it sticks. And if what he says is true, then Michael Jackson didn't just pass, he was eliminated.
They needed to show that there was an agreement, that the organization knew what it was doing, that it was an enterprise, not in law, but in fact, that people understood the object of the enterprise, which was to promote Sean Combs and his brands and sort of fulfill any deviant desires he may have had, and then to cover up any crimes committed over the course of fulfilling those desires.
Which brings us to the figure who keeps showing up at both doorways like a shadow in the hall, Fahim Muhammad. We can plot his timeline with a ruler. First posted, at Michael's side as driver, then chief of protection, present on the day the sirens swarmed. Later, elevated in the Mogul's orbit as the enforcer, with a reputation for smoothing the unsmoothable. Court transcripts place him in the room in 2009, giving precise, clinical descriptions of what he witnessed. Separate filings, years later, frame him as the point man who could, as one complaint puts it, make people and problems disappear. That overlap isn't a coincidence. It's a fuse. We have to ask the ugly questions. If there was a corridor of influence moving through those homes, did Fahim walk it both ways? Did he know what Michael feared in his final months? Was he a bystander to chaos? Or was he unknowingly or otherwise part of a larger choreography designed to hold a superstar in place? The parallels are hard to ignore. One job said protect the icon's children, map the routes, guard the gates. Another job, according to allegations, said dial the right number when patrol lights flicker, keep the operation quiet, tell staff who to call if blue uniforms ask hard questions in Miami or California. That's not an accusation, it's the eerie rhyme scheme of power. The moment we line those roles beside each other, our eyes drift to the blank spaces between them. Who else did he report to? What else did he carry from mansion to mansion besides a radio and a route sheet? In a world where everyone signs an NDA before the valet gets the keys, the truth lives in the mouths of the drivers and the doormen. If even one of them speaks with proof, an email, a time-stamped text, a calendar entry that doesn't fit, the hinges on this story could blow right off.
He was responsible for Diddy's day-to-day life, so he is able to provide a lot of information about what that life was like. He goes into detail on extensive use.
And then there are the gatherings that critics say were never just gatherings. The freakoffs, a phrase now etched into legal filings and late-night monologues, were billed as wild theater, but in the most chilling tellings, they functioned like a vault with a velvet rope. A former producer alleges hidden lenses in every room, footage archived meticulously, faces both famous and almost famous captured at their most vulnerable. The implication is plain: leverage. A library of moments no one wants in discovery. A gallery of executives and athletes and hitmakers who would rather pose for a mugshot than see that footage enter the record. We hear whispers that even Michael's image wandered through those rooms on a reel, that the icon's vulnerabilities weren't only medical or financial, but wrapped in clips and angles tight enough to be weaponized. This is how the underbelly works when it's running well. The spectacle lures, the cameras hum, the denials come pre-written. Those who showed up at the mansion with pocket squares, left with a knot in their stomach and a contract in their glove box. The next time a headline threatened, the call list was short. Invitations doubled as insurance. Black tie became blackmail. We don't need to see the footage to understand the logic. We just have to hear the way veterans describe the hush that followed certain nights. The way critics keep returning to the same refrain. It wasn't about pleasure. It was about power.
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you're a huge, iconic, TV star or movie star.
The filings stack up, and with them, a pattern. One suit claims recordings of several celebrities, artists, music label executives, and athletes, doing what they would later swear they didn't do. Another lays out a network of handlers, planners, and cleaners. The people who ordered the flights and wiped the fingerprints from the suite's glass. There are allegations of a birthday night in early April 2015 with a guest paraded and humiliated while boldface names looked on. There are immediate pushbacks from reps and attorneys flashing date books, saying a basketball legend was playing games that week and not in Miami, insisting the timeline is fiction stitched to a fantasy. And there is the steel-plated statement from the Mogul's Council that's been repeated like a mantra. No matter how many lawsuits are filed, it won't change the fact that Mr. Combs has never done what he's accused of, the lawyer says. These are baseless claims, and he's confident he'll beat them in court. That quote is a wall. The rumors keep trying to climb it.
To her job being to continue to engage in all these freak-offs with him, and he sounds really pissed off.
Hey, I really don't know what's going on with you, but I just want to just give you a heads up that I'm about to really disappear on you. You feel me? I'm not going to be playing these games with you at all, at all. So I don't know, you think you silent treating me, and you think I'm going to be, nah. You'll have a rude awakening. You'll just have silence.
Here's a darker question hovering over all the rest. If such a library exists, would it show a tipping point in the King of Pop's final year? We know he worried about surveillance. We know he cycled through phones and staff, wary of bugs, wary of leaks. Imagine, just for a moment, what a whisper about a vault of compromising footage could do to an artist already peering over his shoulder. Imagine that leverage humming in the background as he tried to stage a comeback. Picture contracts being nudged across a table, sweetened with promises and salted with threats. The catalog, the residency, the rights, the likeness. If you want to understand how a legend could be pressured without a single public shove, this is the model people are pointing to. A velvet vice that tightens until the subject signs or breaks.
Same kind of extortion that we heard when Cassie took the stand and testified on that airplane ride back from France. Diddy said, you don't do a freak off, I'm going to release one of the freak off videos that you are profiled in and humiliate you.
If we're brave enough to say it out loud, we know the line that still rings like a siren. If what Gene Deal says is true, then Michael Jackson didn't just pass, he was eliminated. And if the mogul could reach that high once, what stops him now? If Diddy could take down the King of Pop, who's safe from his reach? And who's next? Drop your take below, hold nothing back, and stay sharp. The lights are dimming, but the truth has a way of finding the stage. Until then, we're out. Watch your sources, watch your back, and watch this space.